and all the frames had fallen to the ground. Hey YouTube, welcome to my tube. In today's video, we're gonna be doing a Paranormal Activity Stories 2. I did my first Paranormal Activity Stories video, I think it was a year ago exactly. I posted it last year for Halloween, and today's the 28th, so we're literally a few days away from Halloween. But I didn't do this video earlier because I hadn't thought of any other Paranormal Activity stories that I had experienced, and I couldn't really remember them. So I had to talk with my sister, and she reminded me of 3 really like crazy Paranormal Activity stories that we experienced together. And I don't know why I didn't think of these before, but here we are with part 2 of Paranormal Activity Stories. Also, before we jump into this video, I'm sure you noticed the quality of this video is much higher, better resolution, better everything. My background is defocused, the whole 9 yards. I got new equipment, and I mentioned this in the video that I was originally gonna post today, but I ended up changing it. So you might hear this again, maybe not, depends when I edit it. I might take it out of the other video, but we'll see. We'll see. But the point is, I got new equipment, so I hope you guys enjoy this quality just as much as I am, and enjoy the video just as much as I love telling these stories. So of course, I had to do some spooky makeup to go along with the spooky video. So I have some spiderweb eyeliner, and I actually did a TikTok for it. So go ahead and go check out my TikTok. It's somewhere on the screen as we speak. So make sure you go check it out and press that follow button to see more content like that on TikTok and on here. So the first story that I'm going to be talking about was one that I was by myself. And so my house is pretty big. My house in Miami, my parents' house, is pretty big. And so if you've ever been, and even if you haven't been, I'm going to try and explain it to you a little bit to see if you guys can get the picture. So obviously we have the inside of the house, and then we have this little like outdoor area that we call the screen room because it has a whole bunch of screen around it. And then out past that, there's the actual like backyard area that we have like kind of like an L shape. But this takes place in the screen room, which is usually where I worked out in the past. When I used to work out at home, I would work out there because it was a big space. That's where we had the speakers. Like that's where I enjoyed doing my workouts. So one day I was out there doing my workouts, and the thing about me is when I'm out there doing my stuff, I usually like, at the time, I like to have the lights dimmed, like either no lights at all, or just, we used to have like Christmas lights on the, wow, excuse me. We used to have Christmas lights like on the edge of the roof. So I would just turn those on and kind of just be in like the ambiance and be like that. And I have like the full light setup up, right? So this one day I had it like that. I was out there, I was working out, I was doing my thing, I was dancing because I used to be my warm up. So I was dancing, and I think this was around Christmas. If it wasn't around Christmas, this was definitely after that, because we have this long sofa inside, and so usually for the holidays we take out a piece of it and put it in the screen room because it's roofed. So we just have it out there so that we can put up the Christmas tree, and this part of the sofa was outside the day this happened. So I'm like I said, I was dancing and I did like a turn, and at this point my great grandma had already passed. So I did a turn and I looked over this way, which is where the couch was. I looked over that way, and then I looked like, I saw it really quick, and then I went back to like, because I did like a half turn, and then I came back to look straight, right? And so when I did the half turn, I saw her sitting on the chair, on that little half chair. And then when I looked back again, she obviously wasn't there, but it was like the quickest vision of her sitting there. And I know it wasn't like in my head, like I actually saw her. It's just, I can't explain it in another way that tries to make it sound like she was physically there when she clearly wasn't. But it was literally like, okay, have you ever been out and you see someone from like the corner of your eye, but there's no one, or like there's someone passing and you're like, okay, whatever. It was kind of like that, except she wasn't in the corner of my eye. I actually like halfway turned, saw her, and then came back. And when I looked again, I didn't see her, obviously. And so I went inside and I told my mom, like, I just saw Mami Toña. Like, that's what we used to call her, Mami Toña. And she's like, what do you mean you just saw her? She's been dead for, I don't know how long it was at this point, but like a year, 2 years, whatever. And I'm like, no, I saw her spirit sitting in this chair. And she's like, okay, well, she was visiting you. And we left it at that. So that was like not the weirdest, because other stuff had happened to me already, but it was just so shocking to have seen a physical form of a spirit, because in the past we've heard it, or like I've felt stuff around me, but I've never actually seen something like in full physical form. And it's the fact that she was sitting how she used to sit. So when we would go visit her in Honduras, she had this rocking chair that she used to always sit in. And she sat in it with her legs crossed, and she would sit with her little arm, like obviously on the armrest, and she would tap her hands, and she was sitting just like that when I saw her. And I don't know if it's maybe like my mind playing a trick on me, if she was actually there. To this day, I'm convinced she was there, and like she was just visiting me. I don't know. So the second story, I was in the house, but I was very much knocked out for this, and this happened to my sister. So in my house sounds haunted. Every time I tell these stories, I'm like, people are gonna think my house is haunted. I don't think it is. I just think we have a lot of spiritual beings around us, and we have a lot of family member and friends that have passed away, so that's them visiting. At least that's how I see it. I don't know. Anyways, this story is my sister's. So the way my house inside is set up is you walk in, and directly as soon as you walk in, to the left is our living room, to the right is the kitchen / dining room, and then there's like this hall to all the rooms. So the hallway, it's my sister's room. Right across from that is the guest bathroom. My room's all the way in the end, and then my parents' room is right next to mine. So in this hallway, we used to have pictures of like great grandparents, or I think it was our great grandparents and somebody else that had passed away. And we even had pictures of us up. Like it was just like a picture wall. Like we had a whole bunch of frames up with random pictures of my dad's grandma, my mom's grandma, my grandma. Everybody was up there, right? And so she says that in this one particular night, she was up, not sure doing what, but she was up, and she heard the frames fall out of nowhere. And so she walked out, and all the frames had fallen to the ground. And it was like so shocking to her. She was so scared because she had never experienced spiritual activity like that. I've always experienced spiritual activity. I don't know, it's always been part of my nature, I guess. Like I've always been a super spiritual being, and like even aside from that, like I've always had some type of connection to spirit. So to me, it's like, okay, like not the most average thing, but also not super creeped out by it. I was like, I can't explain it. I get scared, but I'm also like okay with it. But for her, that was like one of the first things that she had ever experienced paranormally. And so she ran to my parents' room, and they were like, what are you talking about? Nothing fell. And so my dad came out, and he saw all the frames had fallen from the wall. And he was so shook. He was like, what the heck is going on? Like, I was knocked out through all of this. I didn't hear a single thing. But she explained it to me that it sounded like a whoosh, like a wind coming through the hall, and then all the frames fell. And that she heard all of that. Like, she heard the wind, and she obviously heard the frames fall. And my dad slept with her that night because she was so scared. And they both knocked out, and that was that story. Which has also happened in the past. That same situation has happened another time that I was actually awake, and it was the same thing. A wind passed by. I think 2 of the frames fell, and then me and my sister just looked at each other like. And ever since that, we removed that wall. Like that wall is not just painted, and it has a big frame of like a painting on it. But before, it was like a whole bunch of pictures on there. And ever since that, we just removed it because we're like, either these spirits are like real active, they don't want to be there, we don't know what it was, but we just removed it for precautionary measures. The third story is not mine either. It is actually my mom's. So my mom is born and raised in Honduras, and she moved to the US, or she came to the US when she was 16. But before she moved, she lived with my grandma and my uncles and yeah, all my uncles, because she doesn't have sisters, all my uncles. And so they lived very close to this cemetery in Honduras, and she lived in this town called San Pedro Sula. My grandma still stays there, so I guess she lives, whatever you want to say. So in this town where she lived very close to the cemetery, like I had mentioned. And she told me, even when I was younger, she told me these stories about once when she was little, she would walk back from school, and she was walking and she ran into this guy who always looked down. Like he always, like his face was always down like this, like looking to the floor. And one day she noticed that he was dripping blood from his forehead, and then he looked up momentarily and he had a rock encrusted into his forehead, like right in the middle. And apparently that's like a folkloric tale over there. Like this is actually a story that kids know about, and like it's popular over there. It's kind of like the chupacabra for Mexico, but for Honduras it's el hombre empiedrado. And she saw him. And she obviously ran home, and she told my grandma. My grandma did like a cleanse on her, and she kept it moving. But she was so shook that she saw it, because it was so like, you know, when you grow up hearing stories like that, you don't think they're real. You're just like, oh, okay, yeah, they're just trying to scare me. And then you see it and you're like, what the heck? Like, I actually just saw that. So to her, it was shocking, and she ran to my grandma, and that was that. But there's other stories also about when they were in Honduras, that my uncle actually got visited by duendes. And like, that's a whole thing, because duendes are kind of like trolls, I think is the best word that fits the idea of a duende. And he got visited by them. He took candy from them. So he was basically under a whole trance with them for a long time. I've had stories from Honduras as well. My mom used to always tell me about this story about this guy that used to ride around in a wooden carriage. And one night when I was sleeping over at my great grandma's house, which is where we stayed at a lot of the times, I don't remember how that story had come up, or if maybe I was just thinking about it at the time. But literally in the middle of the night, I hear this carriage outside the window. And me being adventurous and wanting to see, I'm the bitch in the movie that dies, clearly. Me being adventurous and wanting to see, I wanted to get up and go see at the window, because there was a window and like a little door in the room that we stayed in that were obviously always locked. But I wanted to go see, so I was getting ready to stand. My mom was like, don't even stand, girl, you better lay back down, because she knew, like, seeing stuff like that, you're not supposed to. Like, they're folkloric tale. I can't talk. They're for folkloric tales for a reason. And like, I think like the suspicious like ideology behind it, they're like, you don't look at it because it just brings bad luck into your life. And so I obviously didn't get to see it, but I heard the guy on the carriage with the horses by my great grandma's house. And they say that a lot of the land in Honduras and Central America and every other country, and even in the US, is very much haunted because of so many lives that have been lost and so many other things. So that was quite interesting that I heard it outside of the US, because most of my paranormal activity stories had been at home or in Miami where I lived. And for me to experience it outside of the US in Honduras, it was like mind-blowing to me, mind-blowing. But with that being said, that's pretty much all the stories that I have for today. I hope you guys enjoy them. They're not as long-winded as my stories in the first paranormal activity video I did, but I feel like these are very exciting too. Like I've said, I've had a few paranormal activity things happen to me. It's just very hard to recall them sometimes. I can't fully remember them, or I was so scared at the time that I kind of just pushed them to the back of my memory, so I don't think about them often. But I will definitely try to recall more so I can make more of these for you. You guys seem to like my paranormal activity stories. So remember to press that notification button so that you get notified every time that I post a video. And please like, share, and subscribe. And see you guys next time. Bye. You know, the suspicion? Am I going to be able to record without burping? Is it going to be possible?